Hey everyone, and welcome back to Daily Tuition. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can create a user management app using Supabase. So let me first explain what is Supabase. It is open source Firebase Alternative. With Supabase, you can create a backend in less than 2 minutes. It provides all the backend services you need to build a product. It can provide a database, authentication, file storage, auto-generated API, and so on. Supabase is open source and uses Postgres database, so you can easily create tables with SQL-like syntax. Supabase is a hosted platform which makes it very simple to get started without needing to manage any infrastructure. So let's take a look at how you can create a simple user management app using Supabase. Supabase provides many frameworks to work with, just like Vue, Angular, Next.js, and so on. In this tutorial, we are focusing on React framework. So let's create a very simple user management app using React. So you have to first head on app.supabase.io and sign in with GitHub. I'm going to click on this button and sign in with my GitHub profile. Now, once you've done that, you'll have the window something like this. Here you have your projects, all projects, then you have your account, preference, access token of your project, and then the logout button. And just down here, you have the documentation of Supabase. So let me first create a new project. I'm going to click on this new project button. That is going to allow me to create a new organization. So let's first create a new organization and create a new project inside it. So I'm going to click on this new organization. So the first thing you need to specify organization name. I'm going to specify here Daily Tuition. That's upon you. You can specify any name here. And then I'm going to click on this create organization button. When I click on it, it will take few seconds to create this organization. And now you have your new project window. Here, you need to specify your project name. So if I specify here user management system, system, and then you specify your password for the database. So let me specify here a password, a strong password, something like this. And then I'm going to click on this create new project. This will create a new project. You can see it will take few seconds to set up this project. Just down here, you have the public key and your secret. You don't have to share this information to anyone, right? Now, just down here, you have the URL of your project and the JWT secret. I already have a dedicated video on JWT. If you want to know more about JWT, you can check out that video from the description. Now, once the project is successfully set up, now just for that, here you can notice you have the table editor, authentication, and few more tabs here. If you want, you can check out all these tabs. Now you can see the Supabase is successfully created a user management system project. Now just for that, what you have to do is you have to create a table. On the left side, you have the table editor, authentication, and few more tabs. You just have to click on this SQL editor. From this SQL editor, you can create a new table. Here you have different options to create a new table. Instead of specifying all the commands to create a new table, Supabase also provide a quick start snippet. You can see when you scroll down, you have the user management starter. You can click on that and that is going to add all the commands to create a table. What you have to do is you have to just click on this run button to execute these commands. So I'm going to click on this run button. You can see we have success message. No rows written. If you're back to the table, you can see here you have a table here which is profile with the user UUID, then you have the timestamp, username, and all the fields. Now just for that, once you have your table, you have to insert a data inside it. So just for that, you have to click on the settings, and when you click on the settings, click on the API. Supabase will automatically create API for you. So don't worry about creating a new API for your database. When you click on the API, you have the project keys. We are using these project keys to access the database. So let me first create a React application. So I'm going to open the Visual Studio Code and open an empty folder inside it. And then I'm going to open the terminal. And here I'm going to create a new React project. To create a new React project, we execute a command npx create React app and then specify the project name. So I'm going to specify project name here, Supabase React. And when I press enter, this is going to create a new React project. It will take few minutes to create a React project. Now, once you have your React project, you have to enter into your project directory. So I'm going to say cd Supabase React, and then I'm going to execute a command to install the Supabase library in this React project. So I'm going to say here npm install, and then I'm going to specify the package name, which is @supabase /supabase -js. So this is a package name. I'm going to install this package, or you can say a library inside a React project. So I'm going to press enter here. Now, once I have this package, let me clear the screen. I'm also using here Tailwind CSS to style the web page. So I'm going to say here npm install -d to install all the packages in the development dependencies. And then we need to install 3 packages: Tailwind CSS, Post CSS, and Auto Prefixer. So to work with Tailwind, you need to install all these 3 packages. Just out of that, I'm going to say npx Tailwind CSS init -p. So this is going to create a Tailwind CSS configuration file inside this project. So when I press enter, you can see this will create a Tailwind file here, as well as it's going to create a post CSS file as well. Now, just for that, just open the Tailwind CSS configuration file. So let me open the Tailwind config.js file, and inside this context, you have to specify the file extensions. Right here in the double quote, we specify the source folder, and inside the source folder, I'm going to specify the extension of all the JS and JSX files. Let me save this, close this Tailwind file, and back to the index.css. I'm going to open this file from the source right here, get rid of this body, and right here, I'm going to add the Tailwind directives, the first base directive, component, and utilities. If you don't know how to use these Tailwind directives, then don't worry about that. I have a complete course on it. You can check out that course from the link provided in the description. Just for that, let me save this, close this index file, and now let me open the terminal and start the development server. So I'm going to say here npm start. This is going to start my development server. You can see this is going to start my development server. Now, once we have the development server, we need to first create the .env file and get the API key and the Supabase URL. So let me close this. Now, just for that, let's create a .env file to store variables. Make sure you create that .env file in the root directory outside of this source folder. So I'm going to say here .env. Using env, we create the environment variables. Now you don't have to worry about installing packages inside React application, because under the hood, React use .env to create environment variables. Now here, I'm going to create 2 variables. First is the React app Supabase URL, and second is the Supabase key. Here I'm going to specify the demo text. You can notice. Now let's replace this text with the actual URL and the NON key. So just back to your Supabase, and right here inside your API, here you have your public key. Just copy it and specify that here, something like this, and then copy the URL right down here. You have the URL of your Supabase, so just copy it and specify that here. That will configure the Supabase. Let me save this. And now we don't need to worry about this .env. Next, we need to create a Supabase client. So let's create a file for that. Now next, you have to create the Supabase client. So let's create a new file inside the source. Right here, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to name that file Supabase client.js. This is going to be a JavaScript file. Right here inside this JavaScript file, let me first import a module from Supabase.js, and from this module we have to call create client. So we have to create here a client. So I'm going to say here constant Supabase is equal to create client, and inside this you have to specify 2 parameters, the Supabase URL and the Supabase key. As you know, we already have the Supabase URL and Supabase keys in the .env file. So let's first access that keys, or you can say that variables. So at the top, I'm going to say constant Supabase URL is equal to process.env dot the name of your variable. In my case, I'm going to have a name for this variable, React app Supabase URL. I'm going to specify that here. Just for that, I'm going to say constant Supabase ANON key, authentication key. And now that I'm going to specify here process dot env dot the name of the variable, which is React app Supabase ANON key. Let me close this file and pass that variable here. Now, just for that, you have to pass these variables here. So you have to first specify the Supabase URL and then specify the Supabase public key, something like this. And now at the end, you have to export this variable. So I'm going to say here export. That's it. Your Supabase client is now successfully ready. Let me save this file. Once you have the client, let's create a component to manage logins and sign up. So let's close this file and open an Explorer tab. Here I'm going to create a new folder inside this source. Name this folder component. You can name this anything. And inside these components, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to first name this file auth.js. This file is going to use for authentication. Then I'm going to create another file and I'm going to name that file account.js. This file is used to create a form. Using that form, we are going to update the profile data. So once we successfully log in, we allow user to update their own profile. So once we have both these components, let's back to the auth and create this authentication. To make this auth component, I'm going to say here export default function, which is going to be auth. The default function we are going to return from this component. And then inside this function, I'm going to return JSX inside this parenthesis. And at the top, we need to import two modules. First is from React, which is use state. And second is from Supabase client. Double dot / then specify the Supabase client. And from this, we need to call Supabase. Just for that, inside this return statement, I'm going to create JSX for this auth component. Instead of wasting all the time to create the front end for this simple React application, let me grab a division tag and put that right here. So this is going to create a simple login form inside this project. You can see I'm going to add a title, then a paragraph. If it is loading, I'm going to display the sending message link. And if the loading is false, then I'm going to return a form with input text box where you can specify your email. And then you have here a button. When you click on the button, it will send a magic link to your email address. And using that magic link, you can successfully log in the application. This is a simple front end. You have to add this functionality. So inside this auth, at the top here, you need to create two states. So I'm going to say constant loading, set loading, and then I'm going to specify here use state, which is going to be default value false. Then I'm going to copy this, paste it down here, and the default value is null here. And I'm going to change this variable names, and this is going to be email and set email. Now you can see we have the loading variable here. I'm going to specify the same name to this use state, and then we have your set email. So you can access this set email hook here. Now just for that, we also need to create handle login. When you click on the submit button of the form, we need to get the data of the user. So I'm going to create here a constant function handle login, and this is going to be a synchronous function. And I'm going to pass here event parameter and the function body. Inside this, we first need to say e.prevent default, and then I'm going to say try. Inside this try, I'm going to say set loading is going to be true. If we click on the form, we change this loading variable state, which is true, and then I'm going to say constant error. If it is error from the authentication tab, then I'm going to say here equal to sign and say await Supabase this client dot auth. dot sign in. With auth, you will get the sign in function. With this function, you can authenticate the user. Inside this function, you have to specify the structure objects. So I'm going to specify here object and then specify here my email. I'm going to call here email. Now, if there is any error from the authentication, if there is error in the authentication, I'm going to say if it is error from the authentication, then throw that error, right? And alter a message. And I'm going to say here, check your email for the login link. So if the email is wrong or something went wrong, you will get this alter message. And just out of that, I'm also going to catch the error here, something like this. And inside this, I'm going to say alter error dot error. I'm going to print the error description or the error message. And finally, I'm going to set loading again false. That's it. This is a very simple on submit handler function. That's it. Just out of that, once you have the successful authentication, let's allow user to update their account detail. So you have to back to the account.js, and here we need to allow user to update their profile detail. Now, when the user click on the submit button of the login page, he will redirect to the account page. And inside this account page, I'm going to display the details of the user so the user can update their profile data. As you know, in the Supabase, right here in the tables, we have here a profile table. I'm going to update the data of this profile table. Inside this profile table, I'm going to have the ID, the timestamp, the username, avatar URL, and the website field. Now let's access this field values. Now let me first get the fields values, and then we will update these values. So we need to first get these values. So let's take a look at how we can get this. So we need to first create here a React functional component. So I'm going to first say here constant account. I'm going to create a variable account, and then I'm going to specify here a function like this. Inside this parenthesis, I'm going to pass here an object. And inside this object, I'm going to pass here session variable. When I call this account, we need to pass here session variable. Inside this session variable, I'm going to pass this session variable to the use effect hook. So whenever the session variable change, I'm going to update this account component. So just for that, inside this account component right down here, I'm going to add here JSX. But before that, we need to export this account, something like this. This is another syntax of React functional component. I'm going to use that here. And now I'm going to return here a JSX. So I'm going to say here return. And in the parentheses, I'm going to return the JSX. Now I'm going to copy division tag and paste that here. So this will add the front end for this React form. Let me explain this form first. I'm going to create a container. Inside that container, I'm going to create a loading variable. If the loading is true, I'm going to print saving as a response. And if it is false, I'm going to return a form. And inside that form, we have the avatar component, the user profile, and then I'm going to return the input text box where the user can specify their username. And then we have the input text box for email, and we have two buttons here. First for the update profile and second for the sign out. To the sign out, here you can notice we have the on-click event. This on-click event is going to call Supabase auth.signout function. This function is automatically going to remove the user ID from the auth object, so the user can automatically sign out. Now, just for that, let me create these variables at the top. Don't worry, you can download all this data from the link provided in the description. Inside this account, right here, as I said, we need to create here two functions. So I'm going to say here constant get profile is equal to, and this is going to be the async function. And then we need to create another function which is constant update profile. And this is also going to be the asynchronous function. Now inside this get profile, we get the data from the database, and using this update profile, we update the existing data of the database. At the top, we need to first create few states. So I'm going to say here constant loading set loading is equal to use state. As you know, we don't have use state in this component, so let me first import that. So I'm going to import use state first, and then I'm going to call the use state hook here, and then I'm going to specify value to it, which is true. The default value of use state is true, and then I'm going to add a few more states here, something like this: the username, website, and avatar URL. And I'm going to use these variables right inside the form. You can see here, set avatar, set username, set website. You can see I'm using these state variables inside the form. Just for that, inside this get profile, we need to get the data from the database. So I'm using here try and catch method. Inside this try, here I'm going to say set loading is going to be true. Then I'm going to say constant user is equal to Supabase auth user. So we need to first import the Supabase. At the top here, we need to say import Supabase from the Supabase client, JavaScript file. Once we have this variable Supabase, I'm going to use that here. So I'm going to say supabase.auth.user. Using this user function, we can get the user ID of the successful login user. So if you are successfully logged in, you will get the ID from this user function inside this variable. So just down here, I'm going to say let. I'm going to destructure data from the Supabase function. So I'm going to say here data, error, and the status. And I'm going to get this data from, I'm going to pass here await from the Supabase table. So from the Supabase table, we need to get data. So I'm going to say here Supabase dot from which table I want to get this data. I can access the current user ID from the same object, and I'm also going to access the database table from the same user client object. This is the easiest way to access the database, right? So what I'm going to do is here I'm going to say from this Supabase client, I need to access the table. The table name is profiles. If you back to the Supabase dashboard, you can see the table name is profiles. We need to access the profiles table, and I'm going to select fields from that table. So using the backtick operator, I'm going to say username. I want to get a username, website, and avatar URL from the profile table. As you can see, I use here comma to separate these fields. Just out of that, just down here, I'm going to say equal. The postgres equal function is going to filter the data. Here I'm going to say if the ID of the table, if it is equal to user dot ID, it means if the successful login user ID, if it is equal to the table ID, then return a single object. So I'm going to call here a function single. That's it. Now this is going to return the data inside these variables. If we have the data, I'm going to get that data inside this data variable. If there is an error, we get that inside this error variable, and we get the status inside this status variable. Just down here, we need to say if we have data. If we have data from this statement, then I'm going to set the data to these states. So just down here, I'm going to say set username. I'm going to say data dot username. Then I'm going to say set website data dot website, and then set avatar. Avatar URL is going to be data dot avatar URL. So I'm going to set the data to this states. Now, just for that, inside this catch right here, I'm going to say alert error dot message. And finally, I'm going to add finally statement as well here, and I'm going to set loading, which is going to be false. That's it. Now, what we have to do is we have to use this get profile function. To use this function, I'm going to call here a hook of React, which is use effect. And I'm going to just specify that hook here, use effect, something like this. And inside this use effect, I'm going to say get profile. And as a dependency here, I'm going to specify this session variable, this one. As you can see, when I call this account component, I'm going to execute this get profile function. And this is going to get the data from the database and pass that to the state variables. And I'm using these state variables inside this form. So we successfully set the values to the input text boxes. Now, just for that, what if I want to update the values of the input text boxes? In that case, I need to use this update profile function. So to use this update profile function, I'm going to use the same technique. I'm going to first pass here the event parameter, and then I'm going to say e.prevent default, something like this. And then I'm going to call here try and catch block. Inside this try and catch block, I'm going to first set loading variable, which is going to be true. And then I'm going to say constant user is equal to Supabase dot auth dot user. As you know, inside this function, we have the current user ID. Just out of that, just down here, I'm going to say constant updates is equal to an object. And inside this object, I need to pass ID, which is user.id, the current user ID. Then we need to pass the username, then the website, and then the avatar URL. And also we need to pass update at. We have the update at field inside the table. So we need to pass here value to this update at, which is a new date. So this is the updated data we need to pass to the table. And just after that, here I'm going to say let if there is any error from the Supabase, we need to grab that inside this restructuring. And then I'm going to say await Supabase dot from. In which table I want to insert this data? We need to insert this data in the profiles table. And then just after that, you need to call here a function, which is upsert. This upsert function is going to update the existing data. And then you have to pass values to the fields. As you know, we have the variable here, updates. So we need to pass this variable here to pass value to these fields. Just after that, you also need to return an object to return the value after inserting. So we need to pass here a property called returning minimal values. So I'm going to say here minimal. Just after that, just down here, I'm going to say if we have error, I'm going to access this variable. If we have error, then throw it to the application. And in the catch, I'm going to say alert error dot message. And finally, I'm going to say set loading is going to be false. That's it. This update profile is now successfully ready. Let's use this update profile function. So if you scroll down, we already have here on submit update profile. So when you click on the update profile, this is going to update and call this asynchronous function. That's it, right? Now, just for that, at the last, we need to create here avatar component. Now, let's take a look at how we can upload a profile avatar. We specify here a field called avatar URL. Inside this field, I'm going to insert the URL of the avatar, the user profile page. So if you upload a new profile inside the Supabase, we need to store that profile, or you can say that image, inside the storage. If you closely look at these tabs, then you can notice here you have the storage option. Just click on it, and this is going to allow us to create a new buckets. Inside this bucket, we already have here a bucket called avatars. If you open it, this is going to allow us to drop a file and upload that file inside this Supabase. What we are going to do is, we're going to create a new component called avatar and allow user to upload a new profile and store that profile inside the storage. And I'm going to display that profile in the form. So let's see how to do it. We have the avatar component. So let me first create this component. Inside this component folder, here I'm going to create author.js. Just out of that, just before this, we need to import this author inside this component. So I'm going to say import author from author.js. Just out of that, inside this author.js, let me first create a simple React functional component. So I'm going to say React functional component, and then I'm going to copy and paste the division tag here, something like this. And just out of that, at the top here, as you know, we need to first import the Supabase client. So I'm going to do that here like this. We need to first import the Supabase client. Then I'm going to first import a default profile image inside this project. So here in the source, I'm going to create a folder called assets, and inside this I'm going to put a default profile image. So I'm going to put few images inside this asset. Don't worry, you can download all these images with the project. And just out of that, I'm going to import these images inside this author component like this. Just out of that, right down here, as I said, I'm going to first download the image, and then I'm going to set the image URL inside the database author URL field. So what we have to do is we need to first create two functions here. So I'm going to say here constant upload author is equal to a sync function. I'm going to call here a sync function like this, and then I'm going to create another function constant download image is equal to a sync function. I'm going to specify here path as a parameter. Now, just out of that, let me create first this upload author function. Now, let me first import the use effect and use state to create states inside this application. So let's create two states inside this author. I'm going to create author URL and uploading. Inside this upload author, I'm going to call try and catch block like this. And inside this try, right here, I'm going to set upload. I'm going to say uploading is going to be true. And then here I'm going to call if statement. It will check if the event.target files or the event.target files.length, if it is equal to 0, then throw an error message that you must have to select an image to upload. Now, because you don't have event parameter here, you will get that line. You can solve this problem by passing event here, something like this. Just out of that, we need to create few variables here. So just on here, I'm going to create few variables. Now, let me explain these variables. The file variable is going to first get the file from the file upload text box. So when you upload a file, it's going to return a file to the files variable. And from that files variable, I'm going to get the first file. Because we only upload a single image, we need to grab that image using an array 0 index. We get that in the variable files. We split the file name and the extension with this statement, and then we get and specify the random name to the file and then specify the extension to it. So this statement is going to uniquely identify each image. And just out of that, I'm going to specify that file name to this file path variable. Now, just out of that, here I'm going to say let error. If it is the upload error, then I'm going to say await Supabase. From the Supabase, I'm going to call storage. And from the storage, as you know, we need author bucket. And inside this author, I'm going to upload an image. So here we need to call a function called upload, and then we need to specify the file path variable name, this one, and then the file name as a second parameter. So I'm going to call here comma and the file name. So I'm going to call this file variable here, right? And just out of that, right down here, I'm going to call if upload error. If we have value inside this upload error, then return an error message. Or I'm going to call here on upload function, and we pass here file path variable. Now we get this on upload function from the variable parameter right from here. So I'm going to pass here an object, and then I'm going to pass here URL, size, and on upload. When I call this avatar, I'm going to pass all these values, you can see, to this component. When I scroll down here, you can see we have the URL, size, and on upload function. And inside this onUpload, we get the URL of the file name. And then we set that URL to this avatar variable. Now at the end, what we need to do is, inside this avatar, whenever we upload a new image, we need to update the component. I'm going to call a use effect hook, and inside that, I'm going to call this download image. So inside this download image, I'm going to first call try and catch like this. And inside this try, I'm going to say constant data error await is equal to await supabase dot storage dot from which storage I want to download this image is from avatars. And then I'm going to download this image. So I'm going to say here dot download and pass here path. I'm going to pass value to this path when I call this download image. Just for that, I'm going to call here if it is error. If it is any error, then I'm going to say throw error. If I get data, then I'm going to say if I get the data, then I'm going to store that data in the URL. So I'm going to say here URL dot create object URL and then pass here data. And then we specify this URL to this avatar URL right here. So I'm going to say here set avatar URL. So when we download the image, we first get the URL of that image and store that in the URL variable, and then update the avatar URL. And we pass that value to this avatar URL. And in the catch, you can console.log a message, something like this. And then at the top, right up here, you can simply call use effect like this. And in this use effect, you can say if we have URL, if we have this URL variable value inside this variable, then I'm going to call download image function with the URL. And I'm going to pass dependencies here, which is URL. That's it. Let me save these changes. Save this account file as well. Back to the auth. Save this file as well. And at the end, you have to back to the app.js and change this return statement. Here, I'm going to simply going to return a division tag with the container. And then I'm going to say if we don't have session, if the session variable is not available, then return the auth component. And if the session variable is available, then return the account component. With this account component, I'm going to pass the key and the session variable. Now, let me show you how you can get this session variable. So at the top, here I'm going to first create a constant session state, and I'm going to say set session is equal to use state like this, and the default value is null. Just for that, I'm going to say here use effect. I'm going to call the callback function here like this, and then I'm going to call set session. And inside this, I'm going to first call the Supabase client. As you know, to call the Supabase client, we need to first grab that like this. I'm going to grab the Supabase client from the Supabase client file, and then I'm going to say supabase.auth.session. Now, once we set the session variable, I can simply say here supabase.auth.on auth state change. If the authentication state change, then I'm going to call here a callback function. And inside this callback function, we have two parameters, event and session. So we get event and session with this callback function. We just need session. So I'm going to say set session. Then we pass a new session ID to this session variable. And in the dependencies, I'm going to pass the empty dependencies to this use effect hook. Let me save all the changes. After that, we need to call this auth and account component inside this app. So at the top, I'm going to say import auth from the component auth and import account from the component account. Let me save this. That's it. We successfully set everything. Let me save all these files to the app.js, save this file as well, and restart the development server. And you will get the result something like this. you will get this login page with the input text box. Here, I'm going to specify my email address and click on this send magic link button. When I click on this button is going to send an email, and using that email, I can successfully log in and update my profile. So let me first specify here my email, and then I'm going to click on this send magic link button. When you click on this button, you can see we have here the alter message, which is check your email for the login link. Now, when you successfully log in, you can see we have here an email from the Supabase IO, confirm your sign up. Just click on this confirm your mail. When you click on that link, you will now redirect to the form. From here, you can set your new profile, specify your username and your website details. Right now, you can see we don't have any default values to this username and the website data. Let me first specify here username. I'm going to specify here daily tuition, and then the website name is going to be anything. And then I'm going to specify my profile. I'm going to click on this profile icon. You can see this will allow us to specify the profile icon. I'm going to choose my profile from my current project. Here in my current project, inside this asset, I have this profile. I'm going to choose this face profile and open it. You'll see upload status. You can see this will successfully upload this profile, and now I can update this profile data by clicking on this update profile button. Now the profile data is successfully updated. If you're back to your table, profiles, then you can see you have that data inside your table. You can see you have your username, avatar URL, and your website detail. So we successfully updated this profile data using this form. Now, if you want to sign out, you can click on this sign out button, and this is actually going to sign out, and you can re-log in with your email address. Just specify your email address and click on the send magic button. That will allow you to log in with your email address with magic link. So this is how you can use Supabase with React application. You are not limited to work with Supabase only with React. You can use Vue, Angular, Next.js, and so on. And you also have a beautiful dashboard with Supabase. So I hope you understand how to work with Supabase with React application. If you find anything useful, make sure to press the like button, share this video with your friends, subscribe for more latest videos. That is all for now. I will see you in the next one.